Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone to our masterclass session today. And the Flame Masterclass is an online learning suite for corporate executives and management, enabling them to learn new concepts and hone their existing skills from experts in the academia and in the industry. Today, our topic is quite interesting. This is about new normal in retailing. We have Professor Dwarika Unio today. He is the Dean of Flame Business School. And Professor Nitin Sanghavi, he is Distinguished Visiting Faculty of Flame University. He is also a professor in Manchester Business School.
So good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to have all of you, and an honor for me to introduce Professor Nitin Sanghavi, as Professor Jasmine has mentioned. Jasmine, welcome back. So, ladies and gentlemen, when I started teaching retailing around 21 years back, one of the persons I always looked up to as somewhere in some corner of the world I would treat as my guru. And I would read his books, I would read his articles, I would follow him. Those were the days of non-Twitter, non-social media, but I also ended up meeting one of his PhD students in a conference in US. So somebody I always had in high respect for. And I'm so happy and glad that now Professor Sanghavi and I speak almost daily on various issues, non-retailing as well. And we are honored to have him as our distinguished visiting faculty with Flame. So Professor Sanghavi, I'm very, very excited. You're somebody who's seen the retail market changing in UK, in India in the 80s, then you've seen the boom in the 90s and the 2000s. And now we are looking at completely different marketplaces, market spaces. We're also looking at the impact of technology, and something on none of the retail experts or the companies or the organizations had bargained for was the impact of a small, tiny, weeny virus on the industry, not just on our lives. We're really, really happy to have you here with the masterclass. And we hope to gain insights from your experience, because you're also on the board of two largest retail firms in the country, Shoppers Stop and the Tatas. And what's happening in the boardroom, what are they doing in Indian context, what talks are happening, how do we go back to the unlocking period and all those things. So Professor Sanghavi, welcome again. It's an honor and a pleasure to have you with us at Flame School of Business on this masterclass. So ladies and gentlemen, let's hear from the master himself. So all yours, Professor Sanghavi, and I'll come back to you once the session is over with Q&A, and then we will have the conversation. All the best, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Dwari. Thank you for the very kind introduction, and I'm delighted to be here with you guys. Hello to everyone and welcome. I was going to say good evening, but some of you are joining from Europe and US, so it might be good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. So glad that all of you can join, and I just want to share with you some of my thoughts on what we now hear almost every day, new normal in retailing. And I just wanted to put the few more words to it, that at the end of the day, it is still about shopping stupid. So that's the kind of theme I want to share with you guys. So welcome, and let's just get started with the next slide. So yeah, this is something Oscar Wilde said a while ago. He said, all of us are lying in a gutter, but some of us are looking at the stars. All of us are facing these challenges in retail industry globally, but some of us are looking at the stars. So let's bear that in mind, and let's kind of look at the next slide and start looking at some of the issues we need to think about. So retail industry in India has gone through a very rough patch over the last 18 months or so, mainly due to weak demand, increased competition, rising input cost, etc. But now it has been hit over the last 4 months by pandemic and extended lockdowns. So outlook is looking much, much bleaker than before, with significant short, medium, and long-term impact on sales, margins, returns, and market share. So almost all the retailers are facing online and offline significant challenges going forward. Next one. Yeah. So what does the outlook look like going forward? So according to IMF, McKinsey, and quite a few other forecasts, I've just put together those various forecasts, and what it looks like is global retail industry will contract between 25 to 40% in 2020. And again, it is forecasted that they will return to kind of positive growth of between 2 to 4%. And remember, this is compared to the baseline of 2019 in 2021. So they lost a big chunk, and the recovery is there in 2021, we think, but a modest one. Indian retail industry, again, according to various forecasts, will contract between 20 to 60% in 2020. And it will return to positive growth of between 4 to 10% in 2021, again against the baseline of 2019 in 2021. So we'll make up some ground, but not all of it. So it might even be 2022 before we can catch up. So what it means is, for a few, it is sad, but it'll be end of the road. For some, it'll be a fight for survival. And for others, they'll be wading through, especially those who are part of the large conglomerates. They will wade through this crisis, but will be left severely battered and bruised. While for some, though, they'll be saying, never waste a crisis. They are looking at opportunities even in the middle of this crisis. So we will have a collection of all of these kind of retailers out there sometime in 2020, late 2020 and 2021. So if you look at the next one. So question for you guys. Do you agree that as a result of this pandemic, retail is redefined forever? So yes, no, or not sure. See.
So you can, everyone can put on the poll, please. And poll is there for 30 seconds. We just want to see how positive, negative the group feels. And we could then quickly move on. The next one.
About 80% voted, a few more still voting. Right, so what does it look like is that we have got, do you agree that as a result of this pandemic, retail is redefined forever? Yes is around 59%. No is about 19%. And interestingly, not sure is about 22%. So that's interesting, isn't it, guys?
Yeah, not sure is interesting, yes.
Yeah, I just thought I'll put that in and just to see what you think, guys think, yeah? Okay, so thank you guys for that, yeah? So what we then have is this, what we call black swan event right now. We are talking about and facing new normal in retailing. Everybody talks about retailing being redefined forever. I agree with those not so sure one is that what does it actually mean? What does new normal in retailing mean? What will stay normal? What will stay new? Where and how? Is it going to be new forever, just for some time? And is retailing really going to be redefined? Where and how? And redefine in terms of what? So we are using those words everywhere, and you hear them in webinars almost every other day. You know, there's huge plethora of webinars happening. Advices are coming thick and fast from all corners of the world. But there is still a lack of clarity, especially among the retail community, about what does it actually mean for in general and for their own businesses. In the middle of all of that, consulting industry obviously is sensing a huge opportunity out there. Not only, and they're doing some good work in terms of collecting information, disseminating information, providing some useful hints and tips, but also looking for opportunities to help businesses to wade through this crisis, but also as a second stage, how do you rebuild the business and kickstart the growth as part two? So retailers are in the middle of this huge sea of change, unprecedented. We have never faced this before. We had a big challenge in 2008-9, I guess, with the financial crisis. But this is nothing like we ever seen before. Maybe in 1919 pandemic, when it hit the world and India and everywhere else, you know, it really wiped out huge swathe of population and created absolute havoc all over the world. But it is more than 100 years ago, and we haven't seen anything like that ever since. So we are in this sea of change, and retailers are struggling to get to grips with it, apart from providing quick fixes and short solutions. What are the next key things we need to do, and not just about survival, but much more importantly, kickstart the growth? What are the 5 key things we have to do to kickstart the growth? Because all of the retailers are aware that it's not just about surviving, but thriving as well. Next one. So I like Yogi Berra when he said, future ain't what it used to be, guys. So from now on, I guess changes will be constant. And in my view, we need to kind of segment those changes into 4 types. Some will be just marginal changes. Some will be a little more incremental changes. Some will be a step change. And much more importantly, some will be discontinuous change. And I think they will impact across the entire value chain and whole of the ecosystem in retailing. However, I should point out that it's going to be different for different sectors and types of retailers. And there'll be short, medium, and long-term perspective that we all need to think about when we look at those changes and their impact. Next one. So what I try to do here is that those impact and changes I'm trying to cascade down into 9 key areas, what I call 9 C's, which I think are going to be important. So let me just start with the first C, which is consumers. So what are we talking here about? Changing shopping attitudes, buying behavior patterns and priorities, seeking greater value in terms of what they shop, when, where, how much they shop, and brand substitution as and where necessary. Second one I put down as competition. It will be within and across the sectors and channels for available consumer spend. And we need to think about not just current competition, but also emerging competition. Next is cash. It's about cash flow, conserving cash. Next I put down is cost. And I'm looking at the fixed cost, variable cost, and increasingly we'll be looking at the third one, which is what we call a hybrid cost. So new mantra probably will be cut if you can, if you can't, then variabilize it. So New theme will be variabilize as much fixed cost as you possibly can. And the fifth point I made down is about continuity. How do we carry on the business day to day? Make sure we have the right merchandise day in, day out. So it will be about focusing and looking at end-to-end supply chain and also building resilience into the business and the supply chain. Next slide. Then I put down company, and this is kind of a long one, where it is run and managed now versus future, staff numbers, locations, types of jobs and functions, how many office staff, home staff, outsourced, also about operations, online, offline, how do we manage both simultaneously well? What's the impact of social distancing on merchandising, staff interaction with customers and among themselves? What about capabilities, competencies, and agility now versus in future? Increasingly, there'll be greater focus on productivity. How do we improve the productivity, manage the cost, defining next level within and outside the organization? What are the benchmarks we need to aim for here? Next one I put down is CSR. I'm sure everybody's aware of CSR. This is about prioritizing purpose versus profit. It's also about doing the right thing at the right time, in the right place, in the right way. Next thing is about channel communication mode changes. What are the short, medium, and long-term impact here? Which channels do we focus on? How do we make it profitable in the last mile? Increasing role of technology to develop deeper engagement with customers. How do we keep that going? Cost versus benefit. And final point I put down is corporate valuation. What are the key parameters now? For example, we look at footfall and conversion and that sort of thing. But as businesses increasingly become mixed channel businesses, how do we look at the whole customer in totality and reflect that in the figures? And how the analyst and other people out, the stakeholders evaluate the performance of the business? Look at the total picture, not just keeping the both sides separate. So we need to look at each of these areas, which type of change will impact where, how much, and then we'll have to prioritize. We can't do everything. So what are the 5 top things we need to do in the next 6 months and 5 more in the next 6 months, and develop appropriate action plan? Unfortunately, there's no blueprint anywhere, in spite of many articles promising it and consultants suggesting it. There are clues, there are guidelines, people are sharing their experiences, good practices. But at the end of the day, there is no blueprint. You have to work out your own business plan and strategy going forward. Next one. So question 2, guys, now for you. So with all that, how should senior manager or leaders both respond to these changes? Just ad hoc, see as it comes, strategically, or just follow the competition? See what others do and try to see how we can follow that? or just sit tight and keep your head down. 6 months, vaccine will be here, it will all be back to normal, and you will just get on with it. So please give us your thoughts. Thank you. Right, you guys are still voting, so looks like. So what do we have now? Results. Ad hoc is only about 4%. Thank you, guys. Strategically, 92%. Good. Nobody chose follow the competition. Interesting. 4% said just sit tight, keep your head down, and this will get over.
Yeah, I'm surprised, sir, to look at. Nobody talked about competition and trying to see if somebody's looking at it. But yeah, some people are also saying just sit tight and keep your head down and fight it out, and let's see if the vaccine comes in and
Indeed,
get on. But yeah, hopefully they would survive till then.
Indeed, yeah. So it's interesting how we look at it. So we need to kind of just reflect on it when we said strategically. So what, and I will talk about that a little later on. But to me, a lot of senior managers and leaders, first of all, have to accept that increasingly going forward, we are going to face lots and lots of ambiguities, complexities, and uncertainties. I know it's easy to read those things, but really dealing with all three simultaneously on a day-to-day basis, planning and running your business on a day-to-day basis, and planning for long-term, at least for 6, 12 months, 18 months, 2 years, is quite tough. So we need to prepare multiple scenarios. What if, and just be agile and be ready to move as and when the situation demands it. So with all the changes coming, yes, we can focus on meeting the changes, but the trick is not just meet the changes, deal with them, but how we can shape and leverage the changes to our advantage. To me, that is the most important thing. Because remember I said earlier, never waste a crisis. So what is it that we, rather than spend all our time just surviving and fighting day-to-day battle, can we just reflect while we're doing that, also have a little time to reflect on how do we actually shape and leverage those changes going forward? So that's something we really have to do, especially senior managers and leaders. Not just get bogged down into day-to-day fights and just looking at the next week and next month. Right, next one. So let me just kind of look at consumer perspective. All the research so far and surveys suggest that customers are beginning to reassess their shopping attitudes, buying behavior patterns, priorities, channel choices, and brand loyalties behavior. And this is important. Of course, it will be different for different consumers in terms of age, gender, income, other backgrounds.
But sir, isn't it interesting, if I may, that it was for the first time that all 4, 5 of these are changing at the same time.
Indeed.
You know, shopping attitudes change as demographics change and the economies of, people started, moving up the value ladder and all those ones. Same with the buying behavior, both in terms of their demographic and psychographics move in. And with e-commerce coming in, the channel choices and others. And then as the brands moved in, the brand loyalties changed from private label to new brands coming up to retail brands, all those kind of things. Yeah. But all of this is now happening at a very short period of time at once.
Indeed, indeed.
That and people are not only assessing their shopping basket, they're also looking at what to fill in that particular basket. They're also looking at where that brand is coming from. They're also putting a lot of brands in the scanner.
Yeah.
and they're watching the brand's behavior towards their ecosystem, their customers, their production, their employees. They're putting brands into a lot of scanner, and also with the channel choices, because now with COVID forcing physical retailers to reassess their channel choices, I think this four of them are happening at the same time, which is very, very unique and very, very sometimes exciting as well as
Challenging.
challenging as well, isn't it?
Yes, indeed, yeah. Thank you for that, Dwari. I think, customers are going to be mixing and matching all the time, depending on the product categories, choices, occasions, and the brands that they like or want to try the new ones. So retailers really need to assess that very carefully from their own customers, key customers especially. How are they changing? And what are they likely to be doing going forward? How promiscuous, if you will, they have become or likely to become. So what we might see is emergence of what is now called fluid hybrid consumer. Mixing and matching, checking and evaluating, trying and testing. So there's a hybrid consumer changing reasonably quickly. Flexibility is important for consumers. So I think going forward, we'll see more of these FH consumers, at least over the next short to medium term. And I think this will have a huge impact on the entire retail value chain and the whole of the retail ecosystem. So the industry and retailers, suppliers, all key stakeholders really need to reflect on this one and start discussing how we can move forward together in this one to meet these new challenges, if you will. Next slide. Yeah. So from retail perspective, I think there's a big opportunity to reset the business model, entire value chain, and whole of the ecosystem going forward. And all this need to be underpinned by what I call fluid hybrid consumers and dynamic market changes. But let me just say for a couple of things here that we need to bear in mind. So when we talk about resetting, changing everything, so there are four things we need to think about for future success. And this brings me to the point I said about earlier in terms of new normal in retailing. So when we look at those things, there are three things we have to think about. First is what is good, working well, and we should keep doing, but make it better, cheaper, simpler, and faster. Second will be what should we stop doing that is not relevant anymore or is not going to add any more value to consumers or to the business. And third one is what should we start doing that we haven't done before. So new normal in retailing, I think, will be about keeping, stopping, and starting. So again, in terms of the whole value chain and the ecosystem, we need to think about the issues. Rather than throw everything out and start with a clean sheet of paper, there's no need for that. A lot of things are good, proper, and maybe working quite well. We just need to make them a little better, cheaper, simpler, and faster. But there may be things we need to stop doing, and there may be things we need to start doing. So we all need to reflect on those things as we go forward. And the next slide, guys. So I'm almost at the end. And I just want to remind everyone what Winston Churchill said. I think it was end of the World War II, during World War II rather, on the end of the World War II. He said, now this is not the end. It's not even beginning of the end. Perhaps it is the end of the beginning. Let's see how it goes forward. So welcome this new world of retailing. Thank you all very much, guys. Really appreciate you joining from all over the places. I really appreciate that. And ready for the questions, guys. Yeah.
Thank you, Professor Sanghavi. I think it was very, very succinct presentation about various issues the larger retail marketplaces are facing. There is a very quick question which has come up on the Q&A, and there were two people who have raised their hands, so I'll call them up one by one. So there is a question by Harshita Jain, and she is asking very, very specific question, because in the light of Indian government banning 59 apps, one of them happens to be a Chinese shopping app called Shein in India, and what are the impact it will have on the Indian economy of banning of a Chinese app in India, and its impact on Indian economy is the question by Harshita.
Yeah, I think there'll be some short-term impact, of course, but then I think probably the way they are talking now, I hope that they will start to pull back the troops. There'll be some kind of peace or some kind of agreement prevail. And it may be a few weeks or even a month or so before we get back to where we should be and kind of call it a truce, if you will. Now, what we now see in India right now is a huge building up of anti-Chinese sentiment. So, I mean, we've already seen one Xiaomi telephone, I think, removing the brand name completely and just saying made in India. So this is interesting.
I'll give this a lot of chatter happening on social media about TikTok being banned.
Yeah.
And TikTok happens to be one of the largest markets for that product in India.
Yeah.
But before this pandemic blew to the whole world, we had a Chinese student who was a part of the Kelly School of Management MBA program coming to Flame. And I was her mentor because she was working on something. And she told me, so we were generally chatting about TikTok and how the impact it has happened in Indian youth and so on and so forth. So she asked me that, do Indians know that TikTok is Chinese? I was like, yes, everybody knows this. I said, no, but back home in China, nobody wants Indians to know that TikTok is Chinese. So I think, yes, there is an anti-China sentiment which is brewing up for all quarters. But there's also an opportunity. There's already there are three apps called Mitro. There is one called Chingari, another is called Ropo. So they're not as great in UX and UI and stability as compared to TikTok. But then you also need to see that what kind of billions of dollars being pumped on TikTok in last couple of years to make it where the product is. Maybe Indian companies can start working a lot more towards creating their own brands of shopping apps of similar kinds. And when e-commerce is kind of moving very niche and very micro and very hyper local, maybe those brands can help build a marketplace for themselves. There are a few more questions flying in for you, sir. There's a question from Sanjeev.
Yeah,
very beautiful question. Maybe you can dig in your consumer behavior hat. You can don a consumer behavior hat here. The question is, how important is Maslow's hierarchy in today's market, and how should business focus their products to take advantage of new and emerging markets? The very good question about whether it is even relevant today, or at what level of Maslow's hierarchies consumers are, and where does the market would position themselves where, So question for you from Sanjeev.
Yes. Sorry, Dwari, what was the first thing you said? What was it?
So how important is Maslow's hierarchy in today's market? That's first.
Oh, Maslow's hierarchy one? Oh, God.
And second is, how should business focus their products to take advantage of the new and emerging markets? Two-part question.
Indeed, yeah. I think Maslow's has been around for many, many, many years now, isn't it? The kind of pyramid that we all have come to love and kind of hate and debate and dissect over the years. I think some elements are fine, but consumers these days are much more complex and very savvy. So even people in the middle might move up in certain areas in certain ways, like they might buy fewer but better things. So the general assumptions we had in Maslow's that the whole crowd moves in a uniform way, unilateral way, and move up from bottom to the top as they kind of filters out. I think those things are different because people, even at the bottom one, have huge aspirations and try and seek opportunity to buy something better as and when they can. So Maslow one was good in a uniform society when they were growing and people were more homogenize, if you
No,
will. But
I
now,
totally agree, sir, because people are jumping and moving to various, need
levels.
hierarchies. Just to give my household help, a couple of months ago, wanted us to help her start an EMI. And we asked her what would she like to buy. And the first thing she wanted to buy was a washing machine. Okay. And I said, why not a TV? I said, sir, nobody watches TV anymore. No. And she was on a TikTok, so they've actually moved multiple levels. The markets and the consumers have moved to multiple levels than otherwise.
Indeed.
The second question he had about how do businesses should focus on products to take advantages of new and emerging markets. So what kind of product should come out? How do you go about doing that? That was the question.
Yeah, I think the general answer to that will be, because it'll be specific for specific retailers and products, but I think general answer would be that I guess consumers will increasingly seek good value in whatever they buy, rather than just buy for the sake of buying and just kind of cheap ones. So people will look for more value, longevity. And I think businesses really need to understand the consumers and their priorities, because cash is going to be tight for many consumers for at least in the short to medium term.
Yeah.
So people will be careful, conscientious in
So
terms
that's
of what
that's
they
a
buy.
huge that's also a huge impact on the buying and merchandising, the how you would do the category planning.
Absolutely.
At a retail sector, at retail shop level, and figure out what is it that consumers are really looking forward. And as you rightly said, if the cash gets conserved, we go back to the needs part of it and not the desire part of it, multiple levels at this case. Mohammed Kutubuddin has a question. Beautiful question. What are the ways in which supply chains are going to get disrupted by automation and AI, and specifically in the context of retail and manufacturing, I guess, he's asking.
Yeah, I think probably short answer to that would be AI will be a huge benefit and boost in terms of planning the logistics and warehousing, because I think there's a lot of manual work going on and reputation everywhere. So the suppliers will, and the supply chain will, the retailers, the whole of supply chain will have to come together to really look at all the key steps, analyze the full processes, cost benefits, and work out what investment AI requires and what are the paybacks, and really look at use of AI in terms of planning, demand, even forecasting, working out the logistics, what will be required when, where, and how. Because at this stage, either for many, it is not there or is not as good as it should be, but also there is a lot of manpower spent in doing a lot of these things. So manpower can even plan warehouses, the stocks movements, and all sorts of other things. And it can save a huge amount of money for businesses going forward. So I think AI will have a big impact on supply chain. But at the end of the day, we still have to remember that retailers will still have to make a judgment.
Yeah.
Because AI
the retail has always been a judgment call.
Judgment indeed. AI will go, it will go a long way in helping retailer to cut cost, make a much better, smarter decisions. But retailers will have to take the final responsibility. We just can't give it all up to the AI to say, you tell me, I'll just go and do it, kind of thing.
True. You can't leave on that judgment on AI. That's the last thing we should do.
Yeah.
It should make us efficient and more optimize our resources, but the judgment is still another human.
Absolutely.
Dr. K. Bhanu Prakash has a very interesting question specifically for you, Dr. Sanghavi. The spending scenario in US and European Union is different that of India.
Yeah.
So what sort of strategies will be useful to Indian scenario? Because you work both the markets, your answer on this.
Yeah, I think Indian scenario would be that people are going to be, we all expected, for example, that when in certain part of the country, when malls will open, there'll be a huge rush of people, pent-up demand, because people have been sitting at home twiddling the thumb for 3 months and they'll just rush out and get it. Did that happen? No. Did big crowd came in the stores, in our malls? No. Few people did come, but they were completely focused on the mission. There was hardly any interaction with the staff. They knew what they wanted. They went straight to that one and straight out again. So that become interesting that we all predicted that it, or there are still predictions that sometime in the next 6 months or whenever the festivities start in August and September and Diwali and everything else, and I hope we develop herd immunity,
Immunity.
or at least there'll be a sign of some sort of vaccine coming through shortly,
Yes.
and this will kind of begin to tail off a bit.
Yeah.
There'll be huge, massive, sharp V curve. I'm not so sure about that.
Yeah.
I
I'm not
think
too
it'll
sure
be,
about sharp V curve. I'm
no,
not too sure
I
about
think it'll be a flatter V curve. I think
flatter
we
V
will
curve.
see some uplift during the festivities, whether it's Ganesh Chaturthi or whether it will be coming to the Diwali or Dashera or whatever. So I think we will see some recovery there. But
So that's a
nothing
similar
like,
question being asked by Disha Seth when she's
yeah.
saying, will there be revenge buying initially? Revenge buying is a new word which has come up.
I think we all,
and then it will cool down, I think.
yeah. I think we all, wearing my retailer hat, sitting on number of boards here, we all wanted it to be revenge retailing when we opened the malls.
Right.
In parts of India where we thought we could do that and we were allowed to do it, we thought it would be revenge shopping. There'll be crowds of people lining up and going in there. No, it didn't happen. It didn't happen. Yes, there are people there, but they were quite focused. They knew what they wanted and straight in, straight out. So revenge shopping, I think it did happen a little bit in US for a week or two.
Yeah.
UK, we are still studying it. Yes, there were lines and queues outside, but no more than 10 to 20% than we would have normally. It's not like 50, 80% more than the normal one.
Yeah.
So let's just wait and see. I don't think revenge shopping will happen right now, but let's see what happens near festivity.
Yeah. Manoj has a similar question, but he's a very more deep question about what permanent changes, or I would rather say damages, which have happened because of this in consumer behavior. I think the psyche permanently kind of, at least the short-term permanency of fear has started creeping in the consumer side of it. So what do you think? What are the permanent changes you would see in consumer behavior? As you already mentioned in the fluid hybrid part.
Yeah.
Would you like to elaborate more on that?
Indeed, yeah. I think first of all, customer has become more safety conscious and security conscious. So uppermost in almost all consumers' mind will be about safety, security, convenience, and bit of comfort. So those are the four things that customer will then use to decide what to do, where to do, how to do it, online, offline, whatever. So we had those before, but never in sharper focus like this one before. So that is a kind of interesting but a significant change we are seeing in consumers' behavior right now. Now, as I said earlier, customers are fluid, and some things they do want specific brand related, other things they're willing to experiment a little bit. So maybe customer loyalty will be, I'm not saying thinning a bit, but may become a little promiscuous a bit.
Yeah.
They may be willing to try more brands and view other things underpinned by issues around safety, security, and convenience. So there'll be, I think we'll see at least in the short to medium term, those issues coming in. Yeah. I think social distancing will have some impact for the short and medium term as well. How people shop, where they shop, and how conscious they will be.
Conscious they will be, yeah. And that will play on their mind, the fear will always play on their mind.
So you see the fundamental change from the retail side in this will be that merchandising used to be totally cram-packed and we wanted customers all around it, like a bee near the hives and kind of all mulling in and pushing each other out. And
that's not that marketplace is what Big Bazaar and Kishore Biyani had created, wherein he would deliberately induce the crowding of the place to create a bazaar effect so that it's buzzing. I think that will completely kind of go down now.
Yeah. Now the argument against that is that if you look at some pictures of people crowding and thronging some of the markets, in some places, open markets and others, customers don't care, or they just, they just said, well, only one life, live it. If you die, we die. We all believe in this fatalistic attitude, don't we? In destiny. Right. So whether they may want to try this one, but then retailers will have to take responsibility to ensure it doesn't happen.
Yeah, and they will be bound by, especially the modern retailer would be bound by the
Absolutely.
rules, regulations
So there'll
of
be,
municipal authorities, and
yeah.
so they
So there'll
can't
be,
create this. Yeah,
indeed. So merchandising, there'll be significant fundamental changes out there, and also staff interactions.
yeah,
How will they interact? What will they wear? How they'll keep the social distance, and things like personal shoppers and other things. We'll have to really be rethinking the whole strategy,
sure.
where we're holding hands of the customers and going around with them, getting them to try things up. How
No,
do we do it?
that's all gone now.
Yeah, or
For a
how do
short
we do
period.
it effectively with social distancing?
And also
Online,
those in
offline?
fashion, yeah, in fashion cases, I think those technology would help in terms of
Yeah,
letting people try out these outfits rather
indeed,
than
indeed,
physically
yeah,
touching and doing it
yeah.
and those
So
kind of things.
yeah, so I think technology will play an important part here.
Yes.
But so some fundamental changes will be around those behavior.
Yeah.
I think so. The supply chain will change for good in many
Change for
ways.
good.
I think for good. So there'll be some fundamental change you will see. Now, customers' fundamental changes will be around being more value conscious, at least in the medium term. Whether in 5 years' time, economy will be booming and we'll just let go again, we'll have to wait and see. But at least, in
True.
the medium term, customers are going to become much more value conscious, and many would have lost jobs or
Jobs. Yeah.
reduced pay, so they'll be much
True.
more careful in
That's
what they
already
spend the
happening
money.
across.
Yeah, what
That's
they spend
happening, and
money on, how they
that
spend it.
cycle, the
Yeah,
vicious cycle of that consumption is led by people buying more, would be led by people having more money, would be led by they're having
indeed,
more
indeed.
disposable income.
Yeah,
But if that supply gets cut, then everything gets
yeah,
affected by that.
yeah. You see, one of the
Uh,
big unknown is we don't know yet is what's the long-term psychological impact
yeah,
on consumers' mindset, being
mindset.
locked up for 3 4 months and being deprived of many things. Does it have permanent impact on people
Mm.
or just a short-term one? We don't know, because we're already saying that children may have lost out on many things for good or nearly good. Whether adults would have lost out on few things, would have reassessed things forever. We don't know.
Yeah, we
We'll have
don't
to
know.
wait and
Yeah,
see. We'll have to wait and see. We'll have to wait
true.
and see. Yeah.
There is a
Okay.
very pertinent question which has come from my college senior, Professor Neena Sinha is here.
Hi.
She's a senior professor at Delhi University. She's got a very beautiful question, sir, for you. With supply chain constraints,
Yeah.
retailers may be out of stock for many products
Yes.
because now manufacturing is getting affected and a lot of things are there. How will it impact the market and consumer loyalty? Because you go want to buy something and the retailer says, the product's not there because of supply chain inefficiencies and manufacturing getting closed, factories not being there. The opening of the factories are under cloud and all those things. How will that? So even if customers are now ready through the norms and others, but then products are just not there, how will that affect?
Well, I think it is impacting anyway. I mean, if you look at some of the online sales for retailers, online retailers, they are really suffering because many are down because of lack of stocks.
Right.
So there is already having a huge impact. I think there'll be substitution. Customers will do substitution. Like we wanted to buy certain things, but
Right.
are not there. So either we go online or try different brands where it's available, or try the corner shop, whatever. So people will be looking at those things, at least in short to medium term, at least over the next 3 4 months until the supply chain begins to pick up. But I think for next 3 4 months, there'll be shortages. Manufacturers doing all they can to make up as much as they can.
Yeah, because they're working out of 30% or 40% of their capacities, and
Yeah.
so
I mean,
impact,
some are picking up and some are getting up to 50%, 60%.
Yeah.
They're hoping, and
Especially in the non-essentials, you will have a problem.
Yeah,
Essentials
indeed,
are
indeed,
still
yeah.
happening okay.
I think fashion industry has a huge challenge.
Fashion has a huge fashion,
challenge.
fixtures, furniture,
Yeah,
multiple others will have huge. Yeah.
because a lot of retailers had the stock already bought in for the spring summer, and they've really cut back on the autumn winter.
Oh
There's a
yes,
big impact on supply chain,
supply chain.
and
Yes.
all the way down the whole of the supply chain.
And
there's
because
a
those
huge
are global
impact.
supply
Yeah.
chains, not
No.
local in fashion.
Yeah.
And it will have impact because the product is coming from Bangladesh or Vietnam or from somewhere else, and
Yeah.
it will have that issue there.
So there is already there, and they are slowly beginning to recover, but it's a long haul. And in the meantime, I think we'll continue to have the shortages every now and then, and customers will just do the best they can with it.
True, sir. True.
Yeah. Okay.
There is a question which is very interesting, brings smile to me from Dilip Pandya. Is it a good idea to launch a retail store or should one hold back for a while? Dilip, hold. At this point of time, anything to do with consumer facing, which is product led or service led, is a tough proposition. And hold on to that. Retail is predominantly product led. A business, it's a service business, but a product-led service business. So at this point of time, I think Professor Sanghavi would agree that hold on to your cash, hold on to your plans. There's nothing great shakes will happen if you don't do that immediately. You can wait for a while and see and hope that revenge shopping will happen. At that time, you are there to, provide revenge to the customers to do that, The Rishabh Joshi has a question which is talking about new normal. Because of the new normal, how would it affect the revenues of the retailers worldwide and how does it affect?
Yeah, I think as I mentioned earlier in the slides, I mean, revenues have really been impacted hugely. Margins have been even more dramatically impacted. So we already seen a huge hit by so many retailers where the sales are down 20, 30, 40, 50, 60%. And margins have been shot to pieces as well. And fixed costs have been fairly high, although everybody's doing the best to cut as much as they can. So there is already a huge issue in the new normal going forward. So how do we actually kickstart the growth? Where do we start? What do we do next? How do we bring customers back in, online or offline? There is already issue about in the non-essential industry like fashion industry. Because we have cut back on the autumn range, for example, how do we do the best we can with what we have ordered or placed or when we get it in the short time season that we have and meet customers' needs as they're going forward? So new normal is going to be quite tough for retailers going forward, for consumers as well, if you will. And we just have to kind of look at the short-term and medium-term issues from consumer side, operation side, supply chain side, and do the best we can.
Right. So there's a question by Pranav, very, very pointed question about how can brands redefine the retail experience for fluid hybrid consumers? Because at the end of the day, we have to push them into shopping, right? We have to create those shopping moments. So we don't even know how these consumers going to behave or their attitudes are changing. How can, for this fluid hybrid consumers, how do we redefine our proposition, our experiences?
Yeah, I think first of all, smart retailers have been doing a lot of research in this 4-month shutdown, if you will. See, what we find is that some retailers just kind of sat at home and blame everybody else. But smart ones went out and kept talking to the customers, kept getting customers engaged.
Really, I think engagement is a key.
Really,
even if you're not selling products to them, this is the time to speak to them.
And you see, the smart retailers, good ones, continue to talk to these consumers, although they were sitting at home in the lockdowns. Really, what are they feeling? How they're changing? What are their views? What will bring them back? What would they like to see when they come back? How can we do more with less, if you will, going forward? So they've really been talking, understanding, and picking out clues in terms of, is anything changing? What is changing? How significant that is? How should we change our proposition accordingly? And are beginning to make changes accordingly in terms of the product, kind of things they're looking for, the way they want to shop, merchandising, online, offline, whatever. So good retailers have been doing that in terms of talking to customers and keeping them engaged. And so more and more retailers will have to do that, keep engaging customers all the way as we go forward and make necessary changes.
Right, sir. There is one question which is about loyalty programs by Sarah Matthew. The question is, do you think the organized retail players in India should leverage more on their loyalty program members in the crisis and communicate better on their offerings?
Absolutely.
Engagement is very good.
I think those who are fortunate to have a good loyalty program will have a very good database and a lot of insight in terms of who they are, what they like, don't like, what they shop, where they are from, how long they've been shopping, So really they need to identify from those their key core customers, like what I say, 20% brings you 80% of sales, if you will, and the next potential customers who will bring you next 30, 40% of the sales. So really keep talking to them, engage them, understand them, and make everything possible to satisfy, delight them profitably. So that should be the focus going forward for customers and for the loyalty program. Those who don't have loyalty programs really need to start talking anyway to customers, engage them and find out what they'll be looking for in the new environment, at least in the short term.
As and when things open
Yeah.
up or through online or something
Yeah.
else.
And I think above all, customers will be looking for safety
Yeah,
and security,
security.
and is not just doing it, but seem to be doing it. I think problem is that many retailers say, oh, we've got this sanitizer in the front, but where is it? It's kind of hidden behind the door. And you
No,
know,
this will have
so
huge impact on how do you redesign the new retail.
Absolutely. And I think it is not just reassuring customers all the way and seem to be doing it with the signage, whatever else we need to do, that is safe to come, is okay to come, we'll take care of you. And as soon as customer approaches the main door, they should be getting those signals. And as soon as they enter your store, they should be getting those signals. And throughout the store, they should be seeing that message over and over again that we are with you, we are going to take care of your safety and security and comfort.
Right. We have 3 more questions and we are 1 minute from our webinar. Probably we could extend it by 1 or 2 more minutes.
Okay.
Very quick question. Sanjeev has asked you, because you had asked about variabilizing the fixed cost.
Yeah.
So Sanjeev is asking not just for the retailers, he's saying how can we variabilize fixed cost of operating a manufacturing unit? And that's a very, very good question to ask, I think.
It is, yeah.
Manufacturing, you have a lot of fixed costs there.
Absolutely. And I think we'll have to start looking at first of the use of AI if we can. What are the processes? What are the repetitive processes? What are the value-adding processes? So we'll have to start looking at all the process map, key activities, input, transformation, output, and what is needed in the new environment, what is actually adding value, what are the things we have done just for the sake of doing it? How can we do them better, cheaper, simpler, and faster than before? And then stop, as I said earlier on, stop doing something that are not going to add any more values. So many factors are looking at it. Many are trying to look at the use of AI and other technologies to re-look at the whole thing that they do. Because many really haven't, they're putting technology, but haven't really reassessed the entire supply chain in a holistic way. Many have done the patchwork on it. So now is the time to relook at the whole supply chain in a holistic way and see where and how we can create value and pass it on.
On the loyalty one thing, let me share the comment made by one of the participants. He's a very senior retail professional and a CXO from Middle East, Dr. Manoj Nakra.
Hi.
So Sanghavi, you and I have heard of him.
Yeah.
So for the participants' benefit, there is a comment coming from another retail expert. He's saying that mindset of loyalty and CRM should be replaced by creating and engaging in and forming a customer community, because where they can talk, share complaints, share product ideas, respond to anything associated with the company. He's also saying very, very interesting thing, because he's saying loyalty program traditionally had a mindset of saying that if you're loyal to me, I care. If you're not, I don't.
Yeah.
And he's saying in the digital world, every customer is valuable because they want attention.
Yeah.
And digital enables that. I think that is a very beautiful comment. Dr. Nakra, thank you for this comment on this. And you're right. Engagement is the key, about me and Professor Sanghavi has been talking about. Yes.
Yeah. I think, Dwari, just a quick comment on that one. I think loyalty we have seen as kind of push loyalties, if you will.
Yes.
And we now need to think loyalty in terms of pull. And customers need to be engaged all the way. They need to be in charge, if you will, how they will interact. And I think Dr. Nagra is quite right that loyalty needs to be redefined in some ways. How do we look at it in terms of pulling it, not pushing it?
Right. This last question by Shekhar Himanshu, which talks about what should be government initiatives to rejuvenate retail sector? I think that's a larger question, policy
government
question.
initiative too? Sorry,
Yeah,
what was it?
Yeah, what should be the government's initiatives to rejuvenate retail sector?
I think, retail sector has been hoping that some of the handouts and flexibilities that have been given to other sectors have been excellent to retail as well.
Right.
And I think retail sector does need some help in terms of whether it's the GST payment, whether it's some loans and other things. Government has done few things, but not enough. But government, I think, needs to look at retail industry as a whole. It employs 12 billion plus people, and it contributes hugely to the economy. And governments need to look at it in terms of how can we make sure the whole thing doesn't collapse, survives. What help is needed, whether it's providing financial help in loan or whatever we can do. Small businesses do need some help because they employ a large number of people to keep them tiding over for a short time. So government will have to make some tough choices in terms of, I know we have limited cash available, there are many.
Right. Right.
Because otherwise the whole industry will collapse and there'll be huge repercussions everywhere.
Right, sir. I think this was the time. Disha, we couldn't take the last question. Probably we will answer it some other time. It was a good question, but I need to put up a hard stop here. Unfortunately, this was the second question, so I can't take it. It was a good question about discounts versus hiking the price. Discount to clear the inventory or hiking the price to be, living it.
I think Dwari's answer will be both.
Both, yeah.
Well, and then, but I think you'll have to be very careful in hiking the price because customers will tell you for sure. So yes, ask for the right price, but also think about discounting as well. And we'll have to manage dual policies. I know it's hard. We have to manage both.
Right. Right. Okay. So for the benefit of everyone, this is a series which is a continuing series of master classes from Flame University, which we host. So in the next in line for the masterclass series is my colleague from the School of Business, Professor Smita Chaudhary. She's the chair of Department of Human Resources, and she is talking a very interesting topic on using research to improve employee performance. Smita has had a tremendous amount of work-ex in consulting and other industries. She's an alum of IIM Bangalore, and then she did her PhD from IIM Calcutta, and she is a very esteemed colleague, well published. So, we would be very, very happy if you could join us for this research masterclass as well on how to